What we do here is go back.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Champ Ron, the Minding Your Business podcast, coming to you. What is today? Today is Friday, December the 6th. It's been a whirlwind week. I've been traveling this week for business in the state of Kansas. That was actually very great times, very productive trip that I had for that. And I'll get into that actually on a later episode because there's some things that I learned from this past trip on this week that you'll want to know that I think will help you in your business. So on a future episode, I'm going to speak about some of the things I learned this week as I was between Kansas City and Topeka, Kansas. But hope everybody's having a great week. We got all the rain and stuff here. We didn't have this in Kansas when I was there. So, we'll see how that works out. But came back home to all the rain and flat tire and all that type stuff. So just the typical stuff you got to deal with. But the Minding Your Business podcast, thank you again so much for you all that are joining Facebook Live, those of you that are on Spreaker.com. Looking forward, I'm going to introduce today's guest here shortly. But first, I want to make sure that you are aware that the Minding Your Business podcast is brought to you by the Binge Podcast Network. We're continuing to grow, continuing to go through people who've reached out, who want to join the network, which is phenomenal. New podcasters, existing podcasters, go to onabinge.com. Myself and business partner Dominic Lawson of Owls LLC and the Startup Life Podcast. Make sure you check that out, the startuplifepodcast.com, and make sure you subscribe and listen to our flagship podcast, which is the Startup Life Podcast. Shout out to everybody, Scott Kenny, Rising Phoenix, what up, Soror? Todd, what's going on? Jerry, how you doing? What's going on, Scott Kenny? And what I want to do today is I want to go ahead and introduce today's guest. Today's guest is David with Savvycard. And one of the things that I want you to get out of today's interview as we're talking, because this is going to be really good, particularly for those that are in sales, which is all of you, right? All of you MYB, whether you're a business owner, no matter where you are in your business, you're also involved in sales because you're looking to drive some kind of commerce through your business. And so today, David Etheredge, he's the CEO and co-founder of Savvycard. That's Savvycard Nation on Facebook at savvycard.com. I want to make sure that you have your notes out because he's going to give some great nuggets and insight today around the things that I spoke about and how to be progressive in your business. And they have some new things that he's going to share exclusively kind of first time with you, MYB, which is phenomenal. So, David, are you there?
I am. Pleasure to be on your show, Ron.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. I appreciate it. And we've got people already joining, and they've got their iPads out and their pen and paper. So are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, awesome. So, David, let's make sure the audience has a sense of who you are and kind of where you come from. So, kind of share with us, your background personally and professionally, and then also share with us how you got to form such a dynamic company as Savvycard.
Well, I grew up on a cotton farm in West Texas, and I think probably, one of the things that molded my, early days was the fact that it was so remote. Anyone who's been to West Texas knows that it's pretty much empty, right? It's a wasteland. The little town that I grew up in was called Roscoe, and I talk to friends who are from like New York or Massachusetts who think they're from small towns. And when I ask them what a small town is to them, they're like, 10,000, 12,000. Roscoe had like 1,100 people.
Wow.
There were more,
that's small.
Yeah, more cows and sheep and pigs than there were people. In fact, the town is really well known as one of the centers of wind energy in the United States. And there are 760 wind turbines within a 10-mile radius of the town.
Wow.
There's nearly as many wind turbines as there are people. So yeah, it's a real small community. High school football was the big thing. We didn't have a computer lab when I was in school. I mean, everybody was sort of expected to grow up to be a farmer or a welder or something. And so coming from there, when I graduated from high school, I couldn't wait to get to the big city, get to Austin, or
right.
Ultimately ended up in San Francisco and got into technology. But it's sort of funny. I couldn't wait to get out of town when I was young, and now I really enjoy going back home whenever I get a chance because the pace, it's so relaxed, and it's one of those places where I can go and sort of unload all my burdens and sort of relax and sort of slow the pace down.
Sure.
So yeah, that's where I started. I got into computers when I was in actually I was in Burbank in Hollywood, trying to make it as an actor. When I first got out of college, I had a musical theater background. Went to Hollywood to try to make it into film or stage. And after a year of doing that, basically working as an extra for the entire time, I got tired of waiting for an opportunity, a break, and a friend of mine recommended that I go and look into a job with Disney Interactive in Burbank.
Okay.
And I was in early days of computer games, and I was really fascinated with sort of what was going on in the computer game development industry, particularly as it related to producing videos. This is the early days of
creating videos for games, and it was very similar to film, right? But it was it was a fledgling industry. It was an opportunity to get in on the ground floor, and so I went in and got a job working for Disney Interactive, and that sort of put me on this technology track that started with computer games, and then like 10, 12 years later got me into entrepreneurship, developing my own companies. Yeah, absolutely. So when you say these early days, is this the 80s when you're kind of getting in with Disney and you're kind of curating the video game industry through video? Is this kind of the 80s or 90s or? Yeah, 91, 92. Yeah. I was with Disney for a year in Burbank, then got an opportunity to go work with a company called Microprose in Hunt Valley, Maryland. And a lot of your listeners may be familiar with Microprose because that's the company that created Civilization, which Sid Meier was one of the early founders of that company. And if any of your listeners play computer games, they've probably heard of Civilization. So I had the real pleasure of getting the opportunity to work with Sid Meier, who's widely considered sort of the grandfather of the computer game industry in the United States. And worked with him for 5 or 6 years at Microprose, and then went on to run business development for Hasbro Interactive. And that was in Boston. And then from there, went to San Francisco with my wife. And, right around the time of the first .com crash, sort of bad timing, got into the whole .com space a year before the first .com crash. But after that, I was hooked. I was hooked on sort of technology entrepreneurship. And ever since then, I've been starting my own companies. Yeah, absolutely. And so, David, as you were transitioning, so you go from small town, southern small town, working on both coasts. You develop the bug around innovation. So what led you then to starting up companies like as you've done, successful companies, and then now to Savvycard? Because I'm really intrigued as someone that's got a pretty intense sales background, and I'm getting some thumbs up from some people here online that are saying thumbs up to Civilization. They're definitely so I'm getting everybody jumping in on that. But tell us about how Savvycard comes up, and as you're telling us, tell us about the steps that it takes. I mean, when you come up with an idea, walk us from there. You develop the idea in your brain, then what happens? Well, so the idea for Savvycard sort of started when I was at Hasbro Interactive, and this is, I guess this is going to be sort of late 90s. Yeah. So in the late 90s, Hasbro had a URL, games.com, right? And they didn't really understand what they wanted to do with it. I think anybody that's in the computer game industry today would realize that's sort of like solid gold in terms of a URL for developing
like a streaming game platform or what have you. And so these guys were all traditional toy people, and they were like, what do we use this URL for? And I was a part of the team that was sort of exploring that. So I got to go to California because we had this idea that maybe Games.com would be perfect for mobile gaming, right?
Sure.
Hasbro had Scrabble and Battleships and a bunch of games that lent themselves to mobile gaming. They had just also recently acquired the Atari library of content and all the licenses for classic Atari games. And so, our idea, this task force idea, was that Games.com and Hasbro's interactive library would be perfect for mobile gaming. But this is back when, mobile devices were like flip phones with monochrome screens and no keyboard. So it was early. It was way too early.
Right.
We were out sort of doing research on what was the next platform transition going to look like in the mobile space. And while I was in California, I got the opportunity to go to SEER Labs, which is Stanford Research Institute. And while I was out there, one of the guys I met there was showing me some concepts for, sort of touchscreen smartphones, right? Just showing me how there were a bunch of different groups that were already working on that. And he just turned me on to this idea that we were going to eventually have a computer in our pocket, and that it was going to have a full color, high resolution display, and that you would be able to interact with all the content through touch, right?
Wow.
And when I saw that, I started thinking, I went back and I recommended to Hasbro, as my whole team recommended, that they needed to, use Games.com for mobile gaming, but they needed to be, they were too early and needed to, sort of think about 5 to 10 years down the road. But I got it in my head that whenever that device that I saw finally emerged, made it to the mass market, and ultimately it ended up being, the first device that made it was the iPhone.
Right.
So when that first touchscreen mobile device made it to the mass market, that it was going to obsolete all of the content paradigms for how content was distributed through the web, right?
Right.
Because you have these big websites that are all about browsing content, and now you've got this device that's about taking action and has a very limited screen footprint, right?
Right.
And goes from a cursor-based environment to a touch-based environment. So from that moment, I was thinking, what does that next iteration of web content look like? And could I build a company that would be positioned to take advantage of that platform transition when it finally emerged? And that's where Savvycard came from.
Gotcha. So David, as you're going through that process, then walk me through as you're starting the company, because obviously you're seeing technology well ahead of the rest of the world in a lot of cases, the rest of the country, that sort of thing, from being kind of in that Silicon Valley area. So, how long or what was the time frame from which you saw that early device to when the iPhone came out, which I think was maybe like 2007? So how many years did you have to kind of wait somewhat for the market to catch up? And, was that easy? Was there frustration? Because I would imagine when I hear that there is maybe some frustration as to if this were 2001, right, when you're seeing this device that, hey, one day we're going to go away from the cursor and it's going to be more touchscreen, but the iPhone doesn't come out then for, say, another 5 or 6 years, that you're kind of somewhat on hold to try to see, does the market catch up? So is that true, or was it pretty seamless?
It was 9 or 10 years. So, and in the interim, right? One of the things that I worked on, I started a mobile gaming company, and went to Las Vegas to try to develop some cell phone games based on Vegas IP, casino IP, right?
Right.
Because one of the early things that we figured people would enjoy doing is playing poker and other types of casino games on their phones. And again, it was a struggle because of the poor screen resolution and limitations of the phones. In fact, there was no consistent operating system. I mean, you were delivering these phones. Any games you would develop, you'd be delivering through, a really inferior sort of delivery mechanism on those older phones. And so it was 9 years between that initial sort of aha moment and when iPhone came out, and we finally had the opportunity to sort of say, hey, now we've got a mobile operating system that we can develop against to build this infrastructure out. But even that wasn't the end of the way, because not a lot of people know this, but Steve Jobs, when he initially envisioned the iPhone, the idea was that apps on the phone would be based in the cloud. They would be something that we now call a progressive web application. Right. And ultimately, Apple made the decision to do their apps as installed applications, as what we now know as apps, right? Or native applications.
Right.
And when they made them installed applications, they sort of did that in order to exercise control over the distribution platform for all of this content.
Right.
But our vision with Savvycard was that ultimately, the marketplace would want that content to be in the cloud so that it could be platform and operating system agnostic, right? So that if you were a business owner, instead of having to build a website and then have a mobile optimized version of the website and then build an Android app and build an Apple app, right? That you would be able to create one web application that worked on all those devices, so that you weren't having to, spend significantly more money standing up multiple versions of the same content.
Okay, David, let me stay right there, because now you're touching on something really near and dear to my heart. So I started a co-working business back, some 6-7 years ago, and it didn't pan out. And I've spoken on this on many episodes here on the podcast. So MYB Community is very aware of what took place, the highs and lows with that. One of the things that hurt me, I think, is what you just said. I was spending money on developing a website. I was spending money on developing a mobile app. I was spending money on all these different platforms that then I had to turn around and market, because just because you build it doesn't mean they will come, right? It's the opposite of Kevin Costner's favorite or famous quote. So just by building it, it doesn't mean that they're going to come. I had this fallacy that I was just going to go and spend money on all these different things, like you mentioned, David, but I didn't have really a good strategy or plan on how I was going to engage them. And quite frankly, it was frustrating for me, because now I'm like, I've got all these damn things that I've got to try to get people to get on, right? That people are telling me, you got to have the mobile app, you got to have it in Android, got to be in Apple. Then back then, you still had to put it in the BlackBerry. So you had to. So by the time you get done, you've got 10 different platforms that really are all doing the same thing. You're trying to get customers through the funnel, but the problem is you're spending so much damn money on all of it and none of it at that time was real clunky. They didn't all interact, and the same people that you're telling to go to the website, you're also telling them to download your mobile app and all this type of thing. So you really struck a nerve with me on that, because I think that contributed to me investing a lot of capital into things that if I had that type of platform where it was one application in all those areas, and that I could filter my efforts and the efforts of my team through that one area, I think we would have found probably much better success even going through that time.
Yeah, and we're going through a process now, at commercially, we're going through this new transition where we're unsiloing the world, right? Because everything out there is siloed. And what you just described, what I was describing before, were challenges that were related to having multiple silos of marketing tools that really needed to all be integrated and talk together, so that you get efficiencies, you get cost efficiencies, you get maintenance efficiencies. You're able to drive all of your advertising or marketing activities through that single funnel, instead of having them split across different engagement points. And I think that's one of the biggest transitions that's going on today that's going to really benefit businesses. At Savvycard, we're very passionate about the idea that building marketing tools is not the same as marketing. right?
Right, exactly.
And that's really what I think you were saying a minute ago.
Yeah.
When you build a website, you're spending money and time and cycles and energy on something that doesn't actually create, revenue opportunities, doesn't actually create visibility for your products or your company.
Right.
It just creates the platform or the infrastructure that will allow you to then take that step. And so from our perspective, there's a real need in business for companies to come along and say to particularly small business owners, look, don't spend your time and money building marketing technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not what you're good at. Unless you're in the business of building websites, your subject matter expertise is in something else.
Right.
And so you're an amateur who is trying to figure out how to build something that is very complex and takes a lot of expertise and experience to successfully develop.
Yeah.
And the other challenge is you've got a lot of companies out there that are opportunistic and predatory in terms of taking advantage of small business owners by selling them services and products that they need, but they're being sold a bill of goods, right? And I think one of the classic examples of this that almost every small business owner has dealt with over the last 20 years is search engine optimization. And you don't understand what you're buying, and so you can't make an effective and informed purchase decision. And there's a whole industries that have popped up in order to take advantage of that. So I think one of the big transitions, there's good news for small business owners, because I'm seeing more and more companies that are beginning to emerge who are saying, look, let us build your marketing tools and assets for you at low cost, right? And build best of breed solutions that integrate a bunch of different tools together, and then allow you to spend your time and your dollars on sales and marketing instead of building sales and marketing tools.
Yeah, and I wish I had somebody like you telling me that even back then, David, for sure. So today's guest, David Etheredge, CEO and co-founder of Savvycard. And so I think that helps a lot of people. I'm getting some thumbs up here on Spreaker.com. So I think some other folks have made the same mistake that I've made in the past, or maybe currently now, in how they're investing in platforms instead of, to me, it's kind of like building a stage, but you've got no singers. So nobody, you know what I mean? So it's like, hey, I've got this great stage, but nobody's on it doing anything. No one with any talent is on it doing anything. And I think that's part of what a lot of small business owners, they get caught up in the hype of building a stage with nobody on it dancing or singing or doing anything. So tell us, David, so let's back a little bit. So what exactly is Savvycard? Let's make sure that the audience realizes and gets a good sense for what is Savvycard and what will it do for them.
Yeah. So Savvycard is a platform that's a little bit like LinkedIn, in that it allows individual business owners and salespeople to create what we call a Savvycard, but is a web application for themselves or for their business. And in the real estate industry, we also create web application homes for sale. And these apps, these personal and property Savvycards, in the case of real estate, are then used as marketing tools, right?
Okay.
So if you're, and we've sort of got two different product lines. We've got Savvycard for real estate, which we've got about, 12 to 15% of all the realtors and all the listings in the United States on the Savvycard platform today.
Wow.
And so if you're in a market like Tampa, where all of the realtors in all 20,000 realtors in the market have Savvycards through their real estate associations, every single home for sale and every realtor that works in the Tampa Bay market has a Savvycard. And the realtors use their agent Savvycards as personal marketing tools, and then they use the property Savvycards as marketing tools for the individual listings.
Sure.
And the ultimate goal is we want to roll out Savvycard for every industry vertical. We want to have Savvycard for like the automotive space, for example, so that when you go to buy a car, you get a Savvycard for the sales rep that you're talking to, but then you're also able to, get a Savvycard for any of the cards that you look at, right? And that Savvycard represents that individual person that you're talking to, or that individual card that you looked at on the lot. And I think people can sort of recognize the value of a system like that. I mean, you just imagine today when you go out and look at a home for sale or a car for sale or anything in the marketplace, you have to pick up a flyer or a brochure, or you have to take a picture of it or write down notes on it or what have you.
Right.
And wouldn't it be great if there was a way to to easily collect a digital representation of the people that you meet, the businesses that you discover, the products that you're looking at, and have all of those get stored in an account where there's a permanent record of them. So you can always go back and find them anytime you want to, right? That's sort of the big vision behind Savvycard. We want to use data, big data, to create a web application for every person, every product, every business in the world.
Gotcha. So I'm going to walk through this because I'm thinking about this even from my perspective. So David, as a bank consultant, right, as someone that's going out and meeting with community banks and running them through the funnel of compelling them on various options they have of working in low to moderate income communities. And they do that through various investments. So for someone like me that's going out, how would Savvycard work for me? Would I be able to, if I'm at a conference or a networking event with bank CEOs and bank CFOs and CRA officers, would I be able to essentially get them, this kind of digital business card that could be, about, my company, my consulting company? It could be about a specific investment that may be available in one of their assessment areas. And I would be able to then track that through and follow up. So I meet them on December 1st. I follow up December 5th. I follow up again January 2nd, blah, blah, blah. But as I'm moving them through the funnel, this is tracking that for me. So it's not like I'm leaving a conference with 500 business cards that I've got in a rubber band. And if I don't have those with me, I don't have the contacts, right? And the paper business card doesn't run anything through a funnel. It's just information that's printed. And it's only as good as, if I give it to a person, it's only as good as them picking up, reading it, and acting on it, right?
That's right. So what you're talking about is our new business line, which is called Savvycard for Business, right? Okay. And you're exactly right. And it's sort of funny because digital business cards have been around for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And the problem with digital business cards is that all of the companies that we've sort of, researched, thought of digital business cards as a way to transfer contact information, right? And there's easy ways to do that. You can just open up a contact on your iPhone and share it to people.
Yeah, that's what I do.
You don't need a digital card to do that, right? So our concept, and I want to make a real, strong distinction here. We don't see Savvycard as a digital business card. We see it as a multifunctional marketing tool, like a Swiss Army knife for digital marketing. But one of the applications for it is to replace business cards. And we don't just provide the technology. If somebody's going to be purchasing our product, we want to provide them with training and education so that they understand exactly how to use it in the marketplace to derive value. Okay.
Right.
So I'm excited that you brought up your own business, because I want to share with you how I would recommend, or how our training courses would recommend, that you use the Savvycard tool as a resource to improve your business, right?
Sure.
So this is a great opportunity. It's a softball. Thank you for lobbing it up there for me.
You're welcome.
No worries. So here's what I would recommend, right? In any day-to-day activity where you're a salesperson, and like you said earlier, I thought this was a great statement. We're all salespeople ultimately, right?
Right.
Well, in any day-to-day activity, you are going to come across a number of high-quality prospects, okay? It might be, if you go to a trade show, you might meet 50 people that want your business card, but only 3 of them are high-quality prospects. They're people that you look at and say, I can do business with this person,
right?
Okay? Now, in the current paradigm, what you would do is you would hand them a business card. They might hand you a business card back, and then you go back to your office and you're going to manually key that information in to a CRM or to your address book, and then you're going to write yourself a note, and you're going to follow up with them. Okay?
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right. And when you follow up with them, they're going to get a phone call from you, and it's going to be an unknown number.
Right.
And 50% of the phone calls that are made in the United States today are unanswered because people expect wrong number or unknown numbers to be robo-dialers or telemarketers or whatever.
Right.
Okay? And this is now even beginning to happen with text messaging. This morning, I got what was obviously a robo-text advertisement, even though they were trying to make it seem like it was a live person that was reaching out to me, right?
Right.
And so everywhere you go today, we're being bombarded with calls and texts and emails from unknown sources, and we're developing this mechanism where we ignore them, we automatically ignore them or automatically delete them, right?
Right.
And so think about what that means in your scenario. You're at a trade show, you meet somebody, you swap contact information with them, and unless they put your information into their address book, when you go to call them back, you're fighting an uphill battle to get them to answer the phone.
Exactly. And matter of fact, David, that's why for what I do, working with the State Banking Association is so critical, because it accomplishes what you're speaking of, but I'm having to use a third party to do that. Because think about a bank CEO. Even if I meet him at a trade show, I meet him and his wife or whatever, and I meet him on a Tuesday, I follow up the following Tuesday. Like you said, he might remember somewhat what we've talked about if we got a chance to speak. But the challenge is like you said, it's getting back through and him accepting that call. Even if he takes a direct call, usually you're going through a gatekeeper, right? So you still got that issue. And even if you're not, if I'm calling him direct, like you said, I mean, he's getting a call from me with a Memphis, Tennessee area code phone number. And, like you said, that's a 50-50 at best.
So take it a step further, right? Let's say you even let's say you call him and he actually does pick up the phone. He answers your call, right? Right. And you have a nice phone call with him, 10, 15 minutes, and it's, you're clear that you've got an opportunity to close the sale.
Right.
You're still not in his address book.
Exactly. That's true. That's true.
Okay. So here's the first, and this is one of the things that we teach at Savvycard. Like you need to identify the simple roadblocks to your ability to grow your business or to generate sales. Identify those simple roadblocks that are having a significant negative impact on your ability to grow your business, and then find a solution that removes that roadblock, right? And so Savvycard, does this in two different ways. And I'll talk about both of them. The first one is, if instead of handing out a business card when you meet a prospect, you ask them, we teach what we call 13 magic words, right? Which is, can I text my business card to you and follow up with you later, right? And the vast majority of people are going to be sure, right? I think in like 8 years of using our product, I've had one person say no, and then I said, well, can I email it to you instead? And they said yes. So I have never had anybody say, I don't want you to contact me.
Sure.
Right. So whenever somebody says yes, they're not only giving you their mobile number, but they're giving you permission to start a conversation with them by text message.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And we live in a world today where people are hypersensitized to giving, to other people using their personally identifiable information without their permission. California is about to enact the CCPA, which is the California Consumer Protection Act. Right. There's a bunch of legislation that's, going through Congress that's related to robodialing and stuff. So hypersensitivity to people reaching out to you without your permission. Okay. Right. And that's even magnified when we're talking about a text message. So when you share a Savvycard to somebody, when you ask them 13 magic words and they say yes, what you do is you take their mobile number, you put it into your Savvycard, you text them in real time. So in a couple of seconds, you're saying to them, click on that link, and then it prompts them to download your contact information into their phone. Okay. And so within a couple of seconds, you're in their address book. Right. And then you text them as a follow-up, which is, there's all kinds of data that shows that texting as a follow-up is over 100% more effective in converting sales than following up by email or phone.
Even for in B2B situations,
Yes.
David? That's interesting.
Now, you got to get permission first, right?
Right.
If you don't get permission to text them, it reduces the likelihood that you're going to get a sale by over 30%, right? Because the initial reaction to a text is either really strong positive, right? Because there's studies that have proven that when you get a text message and you get that, it's sort of like what used to happen when you would get your "you got mail" on AOL or whatever.
Right,
it was.
right.
It causes a visceral reaction in your brain. I mean, there's endorphins are actually released because most of the people that are texting you are loved ones or people that who are your friends, right?
Right.
And so when a text comes through, we have a very positive reaction to that. But if a text comes through and we look at it and it's an unknown number, we have the opposite reaction to it. So what you want to do is get your user Savvycard to get your contact information within their address book, and they told you it's okay to follow up with them later by text. And so you text them within 5 or 10 minutes and say, "It was great meeting you." And we teach a scenario where you link some type of valuable information to them and say, "It was great meeting you. Here's something that, here's a link to some more information about what we were just talking about," right? And if you're in the real estate space, you may be linking to a home valuation calculator.
Right.
You may be linking to an article that talks about, the home appreciation in a particular community or whatever it is. In your case, you would need to intentionally, before you go to this trade show, figure out what is it that you're going to provide as immediate value for anyone that you meet, right?
Right.
And then your process is, here's my contact information. Now I'm going to follow up with you in a few minutes with something that is of interest and of value to you. And by the time they open that and look at it, you've already become a known contact who is someone that they see as valuable.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So with utilizing this tool for someone like me, so then if you walk through the funnel, now that I'm a contact in a prospect's phone, whatever, let's just say it's a bank CFO that I meet at a conference or I happen to do a prospect call. And so now, the ideal, I guess, piece of it, David, is going forward as I'm communicating, I'm building a relationship. So now when I reach out to, say, said CFO by text message or by phone or whatever it is, because I'm already in contact and I'm establishing that relationship, I imagine that the likelihood of that continuing and as long as I'm continuing to offer a value proposition that's strong enough that meets a relevant need, that I'll continue to grow that relationship much faster than I would have in the past.
Oh, yeah. So the primary sales opportunities that I get in the real estate space are with multiple listing service executives. So the CEO or the association executive or the executive officer for a large regional multiple listing service. That's one of the primary clients that we sell our real estate products to.
Yeah.
And I will go to trade shows, and these people are very, very busy. Like there's like 1,200 vendors in the real estate technology space, and all of them want to do business with these MLSs. So it's very hard to cut through that noise. And if you give them a business card and try to follow up with them back when they're back in their office, now you're going through whatever gatekeepers they put in place in their home office.
Right.
Whose job is to basically protect them from being interrupted by people like you, by vendors, right?
Right.
So my strategy is I'll go to a trade show and I'll have picked up an article or like a recent publication or a podcast that I know is interesting, carries really interesting information that's going to be relevant to any executive for a real estate MLS.
Yeah.
And at NAR, I was sharing a link to information about the California Consumer Protection Act because it was very relevant and timely to these potential prospects. And when I share my card to them and then I follow up with that information, I now bypass that entire gatekeeper process and I'm building a direct relationship with that person. And as long as I don't go straight to the kill where I'm trying to sell them something,
Right.
I'm able to build a relationship, and then when it's the appropriate time to ask to come out and maybe sit down and present our product to them, it's a much more natural ask, and it's much more likely to be received favorably.
Yep, absolutely. So David Etheredge, CEO, co-founder of Savvycard, is our guest today here on the Minding Your Business podcast, episode number 119. David, what are, whether it's in not so much in using Savvycard, but just overall, what are some of the common mistakes that business owners, salespeople make when they're trying to attract new customers? I mean, you kind of touched on, one area, which is kind of going for that direct kill of, sometimes people get eager young space cadet and they want to jump in and, they want to, their boss has told them, you got to close the deal, ask for the business. Or they learn that now they start a business and they remember that training from their corporate days and they just dive right in. So I know that's always one area that I always coach people on is, you got to chill out a little bit, for the eager young space cadet. But, for you, what are a couple of common mistakes that you see people make as it relates to efforts to try to attract or connect with their target audience?
So I'll talk about two. If we're talking about entrepreneurs, or we're talking about a startup that's just getting their business off the ground, then the number one mistake is trying to sell a product before you understand whether or not the product is considered to be of value by your prospective client base, by the market, right?
Right.
And so I'm involved in entrepreneurship here locally in Tampa Bay, and I'm really, sort of blessed that I get the opportunity to share my experiences. And when I say experiences, often I'm talking about mistakes, right? And the things you learn from those mistakes with young entrepreneurs, right? Or new entrepreneurs, because there's a lot of older entrepreneurs that are getting into entrepreneurship for the first time in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. So new entrepreneurs. Right. And the first thing I teach, I share with those folks is when you have an idea for a product and you've done all your internal work to figure out what you think the value proposition is and what you think the price structure is and everything else, how you're going to sell it. The very next step that you should take is to put together a survey, and then to go sit down with 20 representative examples of potential customers and ask them questions. Yes. And ask them questions like, do you believe that this would be valuable to a valuable tool in your everyday business? And if they say yes, then ask them, how much would you pay for it? How much would it be worth to you to have this product available to you, right? Yeah. And do that 20 times or 30 times, because by the time you're done with it, you have a data-driven analysis of whether or not your product is, has value to the marketplace, and you've got some data related to price points. When someone volunteers what they're willing to pay, that's because they see the value of your product as being significantly greater than that amount, right? Yeah, exactly. And so eventually you collate all this information together, and not only will it help you to deliver a better product at the right price, but it also is going to help you in fundraising activity, right? Because if you go into an investor and the first thing you show them is 20 or 30 customers worth of market research, right, on your product line, you're going to impress the hell out of them. Yeah. Okay. So that's for entrepreneurs. For salespeople, I think the biggest thing that I recommend that salespeople do is that they figure out how to qualify prospects in real time, right? So too many, there's this whole, confusing motion with progress concept, right? With where it's like I worked 30 contacts today or 50 contacts today, okay? And, if you worked 50 contacts and you spent 10 minutes or 20 minutes on each of those contacts, but 48 of those contacts are never going to buy from you, then that was really inefficient use of your time. Right. And so because we're afraid of rejection, I think just universally people are afraid of rejection, we seek to avoid any kind of qualifying question that's going to get get to that rejection point immediately.
Right.
But what's most useful for us as salespeople is to identify if somebody is going to be a likely purchaser immediately, right? So you should embrace rejection. And rejection is your friend because it allows you to get away from these people that are going to be tire kickers, that are going to waste your time, and to focus your energy on the ones who are most likely to purchase in the end.
Yeah. And here's the thing with that, David, and I share this with people anytime I'm coaching with someone or anytime I'm asked. In my experience, now, prior to me starting, in consulting, I was a 17-year banker. And so I came up through the complete ranks of the retail bank, the business bank, all the way up to the executive level where I'm responsible administratively for a line of business. Here's the thing that I always share with people, and I've always found that I've got to get roughly about 7 to 8 no's before I get a yes, even with what I'm doing right now, currently. And so with that, like you mentioned, the no's are exciting for me because that means I'm getting closer to a yes. So that's just a change in mindset and perspective that I think a lot of salespeople and entrepreneurs have to have. Is I think, like you said, people either they're not always sure of their value proposition. There's a lot of hoping, and I find a lot of people I talk to, a lot of especially business owners, every other sentence is about, well, hopefully this and hopefully that and hopefully and I understand everything's not concrete in place. But when you're getting to the value proposition and you're saying a lot of things like maybe and hopefully, you're probably going to struggle, right? So what I always say that, if you got to get to 7 or 8 no's, go ahead and qualify those obviously properly on the front end and continue to hone in that piece of it, but be able to quickly pivot past if, like you say, if someone's just a tire kicker or they're not really serious or they don't really, they're just kind of, personally just want to engage you, but they really have no interest in really being a player in what they're talking about doing, then you've got to be able to quickly pivot from those folks to get to the folks that will buy. So even with what I'm doing right now, I typically have to talk to about 7 or 8 banks to really get a bank that's really going to have the right timing, have the right alignment with the value proposition, and me do a great job of qualifying them throughout the process. And so what you're saying makes a lot of sense because I think a lot of people miss that.
Well, and I think one of the things that we believe Savvycard is a useful tool for is this qualification in real time process, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the quickest ways to pre-qualify an opportunity is to ask for permission to invade their personal space, right?
Right.
When you say, can I text you my card and follow up with you later, right? There are certain people that are going to do a calculation on that, and they're going to say, no. I mean, I don't want you texting me.
Right.
If they're interested in your product, they're going to invite that, right? They're going to welcome that.
Right.
If they're not interested in having a further conversation with you, it's a different sort of exchange than here's my business card. We actually think it's sort of funny when you hand a business card or somebody asks you for a business card. It's almost like they're really saying, I'm done with this conversation and I want to leave now. Can I get your business card? Right? Because it's a polite way to end the conversation. Right,
exactly.
So,
and they know that you as a salesperson are going to get excited about that. You as the entrepreneur salesperson, because you're going to run back. Like I used to get the Space Cadet salespeople that come back. Oh, I gave out 50 business cards. It's like, okay, well, who'd you give them to? Oh, well, this guy and that guy. Okay, so what's the plan? And tell me about the conversation. And so people generally, would kind of look at me funny, but and say, well, I gave out the business card. Well, okay, well, that doesn't really mean anything. You know what I mean? Tell me about the conversation and tell me what the next step plan is and tell me more about their needs. And so you hit something earlier, David, about just asking people. People always ask me, well, Ron, how do I know how much to charge? Or how do I know this? Or it's like, well, talk to the people that are going to actually buy from you.
Yeah.
Right. So so you're talking to everybody except someone that's going to be a customer. The people get on the phone with mama and they get on the phone with cousin, they get on the phone with this person and that person, and they're getting all this feedback, and then they Google search and look at a bunch of companies to see, okay, what's this company charge? What's that company charge? And blah, blah, blah. But they never talk to any potential people. So I always tell them, find determine what the DNA of the customer that you want. What is that person? How do they spend their disposable income? What do they value personally, professionally? And then go find those people, and then talk to those people and just ask them directly. And a lot of times, what we don't want, you talked about the fear earlier, David. A lot of times, what we don't want, again, the fear of rejection on the sales side. We don't want that on the business side either, because we don't want anybody to tell us that our idea is, maybe not what we think it is, or maybe that we need to do more homework, right? So we're afraid of that feedback, or that someone may say, well, I don't really think that fits your skill set, Ron. I don't think, I think you're just doing this because you stayed at a comfort inn the other day, and now or you had a little bit too much eggnog during the holidays, and now you want to go do this, but it's not really your thing. So I think we're afraid of that, and so we don't want to ask the actual people that we want to do business with. And I think that's a great point when you make that, David.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're an entrepreneur and you don't embrace failure and rejection, you're in the wrong business. So failure and rejection is the fuel of progress.
Yeah.
Right? That's every time, just think of it this way, every time somebody rejects your product or your service, as long as you get feedback from them on why, it's like getting a gallon of gas that you can put into the tank of your business to drive it further, right? Because that rejection is creating valuable intellectual property for your business that differentiates you from all the people out there who just have the same idea, but who haven't gone out and done any work to actually validate that idea, okay? And investors are going to recognize that. If you walk in and you say, I've talked to 20 or 30 customers, here's the feedback, and oh, by the way, our original price point was $199, and now our price point is $99 based on feedback from our customers. You're going to separate yourself from the pack very, very quickly in terms of, as an investor, an angel investor, I would look at somebody who's taking a data-driven approach to evaluating their market space and their customers and their products and their value proposition, and who's embracing rejection in order to get the data that they need to eventually get to success. I would invest in that person, and I would not invest in somebody who's coming in, like you said earlier, with a bunch of ifs and buts and maybes, right? So it's if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening, then you should almost get giddy every time you get a little bit of rejection. As long as you're capturing information about why, that means you're closer to success.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And so, David, as we wrap up, because you shared some great nuggets again with you, my friend, around your business and around connecting with prospects and customers. Just kind of overall, David, what are, I always like to go to this place of, best practices, and what, we've talked about a lot of great things today as it relates to this, but what are just some common best practices for people, just overall sense, to be successful? What are some things that, whether they've helped you be successful and or you've seen it be successful with other people, what are just a couple things that come to mind for you that are just great best practices, whether you are a business owner or a salesperson?
I think the number one, and this is going to sound a little bit redundant, but the number one best practice is to build a relationship with your customers, right? Where you can ask for advice.
Sure.
Okay. That to me is the most important thing that any business person can do. There's an adage in the startup space, right? Mm-hmm. If you ask for capital, you'll get advice. And if you ask for advice, you'll get capital. Right? Yeah. And what that really is sort of underscoring is a consultative sales approach, right? Consultative sales is about having a conversation with somebody where, value is exchanged. And through that, you build a relationship that increases the likelihood you're going to get a sale. Okay. Yeah. So it's the same in reverse though, right? You don't have to go and provide value to the customer or to the investor in order to get them to invest in you. Sometimes the value can be provided by them, and it leads to a relationship that ultimately ends up generating a sale. And so that's probably the best practice that I would recommend is whenever you meet somebody and you think to yourself, this is a high quality prospect, ask them for advice, right? Ask them for their opinion on your product.
Yes.
Because a couple of things are going to happen. First of all, you're going to get the opportunity to explain what your product is. And if you start off trying to sell them on your product, most people are going to check out, right? Most people are going to react negatively to that. But if you ask them for advice, people love to be asked for advice, right? It makes them feel important. It makes them feel special.
Without question.
You change the context of the conversation. And then at the end, don't be surprised if after they give you advice about your product and you've explained what your product does, they say, that sounds really interesting. I'd like to learn more about that.
Right. Yep, absolutely. And also, I've always said this to salespeople too, David, it puts the ball in that person's hand. It's kind of like a kickoff in football. When the ball's kicked off to you, you catch it, but you better be doing something with it, right? Because there are people coming to take your head off and tackle you. So it's the same type of thing. You're kind of handing the ball off to them because now they have to respond. And like you mentioned, people love to be able to give their feedback and opinion. That's a much warmer intro into a dialogue than jumping right into the features and benefits of your product and service, which they've heard a million times. And nobody's ever walked into anybody's office and said, you know what, this product sucks. You really shouldn't buy it. And my boss just sent me here and spent $1,000 for me to come here to sit in front of you to tell you it really sucks, but I got to tell you how great it is. Right? Nobody's going to do that, right? Everybody's product or service is the best thing since sliced bread, and it's going to solve all your problems, tooth and nail. And so you're right. As people have been sold to so much that, getting back to that consultative selling approach and asking for people's opinion and their advice, and having enough thick skin to know that if they're, share something with you that may not be the most kosher or the most easy to take, that you can compartmentalize that and take that and go improve your process or your business or your service and not be put off by that. So yeah, that's something that's worked for me. But I'm interested in, as you develop Savvycard for Business, and how I can get involved with that, David. And so with that, share with the audience, with the MYB audience, on how they can connect with you, and for those that are interested in learning more about Savvycard and how they can get involved with their business. We got several people on here that are in real estate, and several people that are across the gambit in business and in sales, David. So how can they connect?
Well, anybody that wants to can just go to savvycard.com, which is 2 V's. It's SAVVYCARD.com. And you can check it out yourself. But, we've got a phrase that we use around the office that people, several of my co-founders don't really like, but it's eat your own dog food, right? Which,
right.
We try to eat our own dog food. We use our product. And I'm giving you guys advice here about, going out and doing, customer surveys to understand what your customers' needs are and how they perceive the value proposition and pricing of your product. And so it would be it wouldn't be very, it'd be sort of two-faced of me to recommend that to your listeners and not do it myself. And so here's what I would prefer.
Yeah.
If anybody who's listening is actually seriously interested in learning more about Savvycard and how it can be applied to their business, what I'd like for you to do is go get my Savvycard off of Google, and I'll tell you how to do that in just a minute, and contact me. You can call me, you can email me, or you can text me, and just contact me, because I'd love to talk to you and get your advice about our product and whether or not you think it's valuable. And as a function of doing that, it'll help me to understand whether or not we've got the right sort of value proposition and the right idea about how Savvycard for Business is going to be useful to prospective clients. So the way you can get my card is really simple. Go to Google and just search on my name, which is David, and the last name is Etheredge, and it's spelled Etheredge. So Etheredge. and my Savvycard comes up, I think, number 1 or number 2 for my name on Google, right?
Okay.
So that's how they can get a hold of me, and I'd be really thrilled to talk to any of your listeners.
Yeah, that's excellent. And so they need to search your name on Google, pull up your Savvycard. They'll be able to connect with you there. And then, from there, as David mentioned, have a dialogue with him, share your, honest assessment of the business. That'll definitely be, helpful for him and for yourself, because it's great, as you mentioned earlier, newer business owners or newer salespeople, if you've been around for a while, it's a good practice to even give your own feedback, because that can help you maybe connect some dots as you have the dialogue with David for your own business and how this particular product can be of value to you now and in the future. So I encourage everybody to do that. Go Google David Etheredge on Google. It'll come up for his Savvycard. Connect with them, and you're able to connect then with the CEO of the company and provide feedback, which you don't always get an opportunity to do. So definitely, but everybody take the message. Go home and eat your own dog food this weekend. And look,
all right.
Yeah, so David, listen, thanks, man, so much. I appreciate you taking time out. I know you're busy with a lot of different things, and the weekend's coming up, man. I'd like to remain in touch, so let's do so. But thank you so much for joining here on the Minding Your Business podcast.
Yeah, listen, thank you for your time today, Ron, and I really am excited to build a relationship with you and see where it goes.
Yep, absolutely, David. We'll definitely talk again here soon. Have a great weekend. Happy holidays to you and your family. And go be great.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, David. Bye.
Take care.
Bye. So that was David Etheredge, CEO, co-founder, man, of Savvycard. Check him out, savvycard.com. Right now, a lot of his products are real estate based. So for those of you that are in the real estate industry, definitely go and check that out. But, you got to be able to use the tools. We're coming up on 2020 and everybody's talking about leveling up. Everybody's got the catchphrases, right? You got to use the tools. Because if you're not going to use the tools, and you got to figure out how they work in your particular space, in your industry and in your business. And like David and I were talking about, you got to connect. One of the things that I see a lot of people do is, and I talked about this on the podcast or earlier as I was just talking to David, but one of the things is people are so self-absorbed that they think it's just going to work just because they come up with the idea. And it doesn't typically work that way. You got to engage. So the people that you're trying to reach, you got to have a goal of why you're doing something. Not just doing it just to have an activity. Why are you doing it? And you got to connect with the people who are looking to do business with you or consume whatever it is that you're providing. So who finds it of value besides yourself? So think about that as you're listening to this podcast and you're sharing it with other people. Think about that very well notion of if you're looking to start something up new in 2020, who's going to do business with you? Who are the type of people that do business with you? Where are they? Where they spend their money? Where they like to hang out? How they like to dress? What are they doing on social media? What are they liking? What are they following? What are they commenting on? And then you got to go to them and, like David said, connect with 20 or 30 of them and just ask. Do that initial survey and just find out. You'll be blown away in some cases of what you'll find out. And maybe an angle that you hadn't thought about that you can add on to what you were looking to do, or maybe revamp what you were looking to do. So anyway, I hope you take that and found some good value in that, MYB. So listen, that was episode 119. Thank you again to David Etheredge, CEO, co-founder of Savvycard, savvycard.com. Make sure you search his name in Google, get his Savvycard, connect with him directly, CEO of the company. And learn some more, ask more questions, give him some feedback on his company. And while you've got his ear, you can probably get some feedback on your company. So he could be one of those people that will give you good feedback on what you're looking to do or what you're already doing that may actually help you. So Champ Ron, the Minding Your Business podcast. Today, again, is Friday, December the 6th. We're heading quickly towards the end of the year, quickly through the holiday season. Hope everybody, again, has a great weekend. Looks forward to episode number 120 coming next week. We'll have another great guest join us, going to provide some more information to you. Don't forget the t-shirts. So there's no business like minding your own t-shirts are now available. I've got to go pick up a batch of them today. They are available at themybpodcast.com/shop, SHOP. themybpodcast.com/shop. 7 different colors are available, no shipping charge, $19.99. Get yours and make sure that people know that you're about minding your business. Entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news, there's no business like minding your own. You guys go be great. I'll catch you next time.
What we do here is go back.